Now, like the Super League show coming out on a Monday, this is Wednesday. There's no point in us talking about last week's games, but I need to bring you video comment. People should read the YouTube comments. They say don't read the comments, but thank you to everyone who does comment. I'm looking at the cameras there. I'm looking at the monitors there, cameras here. Thank you to everyone who comments. Ronald's just listening in from Chicago, who subscribes to the magazine as well, most importantly, because that brings in money. But Martin James, who's a regular contributor, wrote 3 paragraphs. I'm going to skip to the last one because he was writing about the pink and the green, and there was a newspaper strike in the 60s. Don't buy the Yorkshire Evening News, he says. But he says, I also remember Leeds Central Reference Library. That is where I often used to bunk off school, at least in winter, or if I didn't have a bus fare to go exploring. You could read up on much more interesting things than stuff at school. The cops and school attendance officers never came looking for truants there. The amusement arcades down Vicar Lane were a different matter. Going there when you were bunking off was a mugs game. Besides, there was always the art gallery next door to the library. There you might view some classical works in the style of Rubens or similar, depicting half-naked women. At 14 or 15, I didn't know much about art, but I knew what I liked. Now teenage lads have the internet. Thank you to Martin for that comment, which I think pretty much sums up the audience of this programme. But at least someone's listening and paying attention, so we're all in favour of that. Thank you very much for all those who've already watched or listened to yesterday's programme. It was different to everything we usually do, so that's why we're here to just talk a little bit about Rugby League. Although, as I say, there's no point in us really talking about the matches last week, Phil, although we'll talk about the women's game because no one saw them. But I didn't see Catalans beat Wigan because I was out. I was in Sheffield watching Sophie Ellis-Bextor, which was probably better than watching Wigan. Losing 28-0. Huddersfield beat Cass 36-24. I did watch that in the afternoon. Hull beat Leeds 31-8. Salford 16. Hull KR 26. Salford's wheels have fallen off now, obviously.
Well, St. probably Helens, not, because they play Leeds this week.
They play Leeds this week. Oh, yeah. St. Helens 28, Warrington 2. Wheels definitely off the Wizzy Rascal. And Wakefield 1, so that's the most important thing. 18 points to 6. Tom Johnson did this thing. He threw the ball in midair. And some people say, it's a fluke. And of course, doesn't matter. It looks good.
Reminded me very much of Dean Farray doing something similar for New Zealand in the semi-final of the World Cup against England. And it's an incredible skill. And that, as we've said lots of times, is exactly what we should be publicising on social media. To be able to have the presence of mind and balance to know exactly where you are whilst you're in the air flying into the crowd and get a ball on the inside for a try. It's just phenomenal skill, and that that is what we should be highlighting.
They got it out there quick as well, did the Super League people, in fairness, so I can't knock them.
Brilliant.
For that. No. So well done, Wakefield. We won a game. We won 2 over the weekend, but more on that to come. Saints are top of Super League. They are 5 from 5. Who have they got this week?
They're away in Toulouse.
There you go. So 6 from 6 for St. Helens. They've got some of those players. Teams picking up injuries before they go to France. It's very odd. But Saints could probably Anyway, regardless.
I know we won't go into any huge amount of detail of last week, but I think it is worth saying that Saints have had some difficulty with Warrington during the regular season, even in this run of 3 consecutive titles, and they were absolutely imperious. And everybody quite rightly makes note of their attack. And again, the other clip that went viral after the game was Johnny Lomax's explanation at the touchscreen with John Wells. Absolutely brilliant. 7 minutes of mastery, not only of understanding what he did, but the way he explained it was so uplifting, and it was such a positive for rugby league players. I know that occasionally we joke about what they say on social media, but when you've got Johnny Lomax explaining exactly how he sees a move developing, it is science of the highest degree. And we keep saying, "Oh, rugby league, it's a simple game." It's not. When you've got somebody like that explaining exactly how he's manoeuvred players into position to get the result that he wants, that is science of the highest order. And that was brilliant. And I think a lot has been made of the Saints' attack, but their defence is just ridiculous at the moment. And again, to not concede a try against one of their likely title rivals, even at this stage of the season, was hugely impressive. I think you're right. This week, they'll probably need 3 or 4 replacements, which is not something that they've had to do for the rest of the season. I think we've seen from the last couple of matches that Toulouse seem to be hitting a bit of a Super League groove, although they haven't yet pulled off a win. So yeah, I think, you know, you will see the result of top playing bottom, but Saints were just magnificent, and it just needs saying more often, because I think there's a danger it gets taken for granted. I think the other result that people will want us to comment on is whether Leeds are in crisis or not. And you know me, I have mitigated on for a number of years, made excuses where I believe there are some. I can't find any for that performance.
Not against Hull, who are just such an inconsistent side. And I know everyone's banging on, Jake Connor set up 13 tries this year, but that's not in every game. People forget. Yeah, no, I mean, in fairness, England could have picked him this week because no one bothered to turn up for the, you know, training sessions. That's good in World Cup year, isn't it?
I think the other thing about that game is that, again, if you focus on Leeds underperforming, you don't pay enough credit to those who were absolutely outstanding. And whilst Connor probably quite rightly took the eye, the performance by Chris Sarte was as dominant as Alex Walmsley. You know, we quite rightly laud the fact that he is the guy upon which St Helens base a lot of what they do, or the speed of their line and the power of him going through it. But Sarte, I think, according to Hull's stats, made something like 235 metres. You know, you could add 3 forwards together and not get that. It was astonishing.
Anything else happened in Super League we need to mention? Cast did fight back, but, you know, they lost. I
think, again, the debate remains around yellow cards. I think we're at an average of 1 a game at the moment. I think Aaron Bauer did a piece today analysing that the amount of cards that have been shown in the first 5 rounds is a third up on this time last year. So clearly there's always as Ralph Rimmer said, there's always a bedding in period when you're going to have a purge on something, and it does tend to settle down after the opening 4 or 5 weeks. I think that the difference at the moment is between the issuing of cards and the penalties that then come on the back of them, that people are saying there's an inconsistency. And when I say people are saying, I've never seen as many players you know, go to social media and say, look, we need some guidance. There's been a meeting today between the coaches and Robert Hicks on Zoom. I've not seen anything out of that meeting yet. So presumably there'll be some guidelines onto, you know, what is and isn't acceptable. Coaches will say. The one really interesting thing I thought, and I think you might have picked up on it as well, is that both Ian Watson and Lee Radford, after that Huddersfield Castleford game, were almost accusing players of, let's call it, professionalism. There were a lot of equations with what happens in football and milking situations to your advantage, which, let's face it, there's always been players who've milked situations to their advantage. But if they are going to call out professionalism, are they prepared to deal with it in their own club as well? Will they drop somebody that they feel you know, has gone against the moral code that they're trying to say others are not living up to? And you know, often it starts at home. So you've had 2 coaches there that have effectively accused the opposition of something, but nobody has been singled out. Nobody's been stood down by their coaches. They can have the meetings with Robert Hicks. They can put out the public statements after matches. But if that is the law now, then some are going to have to put their own house in order if they think they've got players that are trying to exploit the rules. Or are coaches saying publicly one thing and privately another?
So, you know, players go on Twitter and they're quick to criticise referees. Big fan of, what's he called? Bradford fella, Jordan Lilly, who, of course, isn't leading England in the World Cup, having to go at Chris Kendall for sending George Williams to the sin bin for offside, because persistent offsides leading to a yellow card has been a thing for a dog's age now. So I don't know where Jordan Lilly's been hiding for years to miss that one and have a go at the referee. And also Leeds Hull on Thursday, Liam Moore sending people to the sin bin here, there and everywhere, and Luke Gale on the telly asking, is this a yellow card? And the simple answer to that question is yes, it is, because Liam Moore's given a yellow card, and we're 5 weeks into the season, and if you haven't learned what's a yellow card yet, then more fool you. But the players, are they going to come out and criticise their peers for diving and milking situations? And if they do, then, you know, hands up. fair enough. But if you're going on telly and on social media and saying this, that, and the other about referees, questioning their rulings, are you going to do it to your mates? Rangy Chase sent out a tweet, and that's what I, said. It's up to the players can sort themselves out, but they're quick to criticise referees, but not to criticise themselves, and that's where the issue for me comes anyway. It's all right blaming the referee, but you never blame your own mates, do you? So we'll see what they do. I'm waiting for the disciplinary to come up anyway, because there are 2 yellow cards in Wakefield and Cass in the Women's Challenge Cup at the weekend. Not for headshots, for having a bit of a scrap. So I want to see what the disciplinary makes of that. Well, no yellow cards for headshots, though.
We saw what happened in Perpignan, didn't we? We saw Cade Ellis of Wigan get 5 games, and Jordan Desiree, depending on which commentator you follow, he got 3. And again, the players were told at the beginning of the season that, punching, attacks to the head that were, part of a fight scenario were going to attract maximum bans. So again, both of those clubs, I think, have accepted that, and we get on. But interesting if that set the template for the women's game, because 5 games in that, you'd be missing, a third of the season.
I've got to say, it wasn't as violent as the incident in France. I don't know what someone's going to have to help us with the language of things, because the traditional thing you would describe a fight as is handbags. I'm not sure you can use that in Women's Super League. So someone can help us out with the language on that one. But
man bags.
But it was quite amusing, because they both got sent to the sin bin, and then, but no high shots. And I know people will say, well, the game's slow, whatever, but there were no yellow cards for high shots. So either women pay attention to the rules, and the men don't.
It can be done. Yeah,
it can be. I didn't tweet last week, and I could have done. I know exactly why the BBC showed Barrow versus St Helens in the Women's Challenge Cup, and I know everyone's gone, oh, it's great, St. Traiton, and this, that, and the other. And that game was always going to be that result. I think you should show games that are going to be as close as possible, or at least in theory will be close beforehand, because I think you get a more entertaining game. And I'm not saying Saints wasn't entertaining, because they are entertaining to watch, but it was one-way traffic. 68-0. It is what it is. Warrington beating the Army 50 points to 8. Leeds beat Huddersfield 38-8. And that's an interesting result, that one, for both sides, because obviously Leeds have brought in some interesting players in the off-season. Georgia Roach obviously being the most high profile of those. Huddersfield have strengthened as well, but they're having to make a big leap up themselves. Lee Miners Rangers beat Hull 72-0. Bradford lost to Wigan 44-6. York beat Dewsbury 78-0. Wakefield 32-10 over Cass, and Featherstone 30 points to 10 over Alton. That Group D is going to be the most interesting one in the Women's Challenge Cup, and we knew that before the start. So I don't know if they're going to pick a game in the next round to show on our league or whatever, but I'll be looking at the game from that group.
I think it's York, because York are playing a double header, men and women. So
there's no other games this week apart from that one. So the week after, I would pick Wakefield and Featherstone, but I'm biased. But Featherstone will probably win that one. The interesting thing about the Women's Super League this year, and we've kind of mentioned it before in terms of the branding of Lee, and I'm not picking on Lee Miners Rangers here, but the Women's Super League is the elite competition, yet one of the clubs in it, and I know no one gets paid, so it's kind of a weird thing to hang a hat on. But one of the clubs is an amateur club in the elite competition. I know that they're on merit. I'm not saying they shouldn't be there, but it stands out like a sore thumb.
Rebranded, like perhaps in the wheelchair game, where we've seen Leyland effectively become Wigan, and I think the other thing about that is really interesting news coming out of Australia in the women's game.
Yes,
over the last 24 hours, that clearly they're having 2 seasons this year. I think we said that last week. It started off really high standard, been getting great viewing figures and some good attendances at the grounds as well. But they've already announced their plan for how the women's game moves forward. They're going to 8 teams in 2023, and they're going to 10 teams in 2024. They're already taking applications from some of the NRL clubs, like, for example, the North Queensland Cowboys, who haven't yet set up a women's team. So instead of rushing inside, it seems a planned progression. They're also clearly they've got a lot more money at their disposal. They've just announced as it 40 million Australian dollar surplus across the whole game, and they are looking now to start to salary women and introduce the idea of a marquee player. And again, I just think clearly we're both almost starting from the same place when it comes to women's rugby league. You don't know how many people are going to want to play. You don't know what the initial standard's going to be until they've started playing, and you can begin to raise it. But I just think you're right that we may have gone down a road of let's get teams in and let them find a level, whereas the Australians have gone perhaps the other way and said let's find a level and then get teams in. So it'd be very interesting to see which is the preferred route, maybe 3 or 4 years from now, that what the standard looks like. And clearly, obviously, over in Australia, they've got I think New Zealand Warriors will be back. They were initial team, but had to pull out because of COVID and weren't allowed to travel. I think we've got Papua New Guinea players playing in there as well, and so clearly there probably is a greater talent pool like there is with the men's game. But it's really interesting to see the different ways they've decided to go about developing their competition.
Well, the amount of debutants in that Castleford Wakefield game on Sunday, and it was a good game. To say Wakefield didn't win a game in all of 2021, and the interesting thing there is if Wakefield had held on and beat York in the Challenge Cup last year, which happened before York signed all those players, how things would have been different in that sense. But we'll never know. But the amount of players who were making their debuts in that, not just for their clubs, but in Rugby League on Sunday, was interesting, and it was a decent game. So, but going back to Australia, asked a question on Twitter, and it's a difficult one because, of course, you've got to make the commitment to go over there for the 8-10 weeks or whatever, and that's difficult when you're having to take a sabbatical from a proper job, quote unquote. I wonder if any England players would be tempted with a move over to Australia for that short period of time.
Well,
we know players have been asked before in the past.
Yeah, I mean, Roxy Murdoch-Masila has followed her husband Ben. I think she's dropped the Masila as a player. She's playing and scoring for Brisbane Broncos. I think Shah Booth, she signed with Manly, but she's certainly now signed with one of the NRL clubs, having gone through the Brisbane divisions. I think if you're young, I mean, I look at somebody like Carrie Roberts at St Helens, who I think is one of the stars of the game, came through the army ranks. I think, if she could get a posting to Australia, maybe maintain her job within some role of the forces, she'd be absolutely perfect to play there. And again, as we mentioned with the men's game, what is going to give us the best chance of winning the World Cup? More players having played at NRL level on a regular basis at a higher level of intensity on a week-to-week basis. Would it help the England women's team if they were to do similar? It just might. So, if Chantal Crowell decided that it was for her to go over there and try and make it, now that they're being paid to make a career in the short term out of playing rugby league, and maybe, I don't know what her profession is, but, let's just pick one at random. Let's say she was a nurse as well and she could combine the two. Then why wouldn't you take that opportunity if it was available to you?
To become an agent for these women's players and get in touch with Australian clubs. Is there any money in agenting? There's probably more money in that than women's rugby league. It was good. The first weekend was good. Again, I would pick different games, but who cares what I think? I am what I am. Hopefully you enjoyed the stuff.
Masters is back. There were 3 festivals at the weekend, which is great. Wheelchair week 2 saw the first win for London Roosters at home to North Wales Crusaders. Again, I think that's a bit of a landmark for the wheelchair game, and a big win for Wigan over Warrington. But
good for the points difference.
I suspect again that that is to do with the fact that Warrington are a new club and Wigan have the germination of a very seasoned club as the bulk of their ranks. But that happens in wheelchair. So looking forward to week 3 of that. It's all good.
it's all good. Barrow 3 in the Challenge Cup beating Workington. Featherstone beat Batley. North Wales lost to Sheffield. Whitehaven beat York, and Lee edged out Bradford on Monday night. The draw was made on North. Barrow versus Huddersfield. Catlands Featherstone. Hull KR versus Lee. Leeds versus Cass. Sheffield Eagles, Hull FC. Warrington Wakefield. What a terrible draw that is. Whitehaven St Helens, and Wigan versus Salford. Again, I know why Whitehaven Saints is going to be on TV, but Whitehaven have won. I think is
zero
games.
Kyle Amor is likely to be commentating, and he's got a foot in each camp. But I think the Whitehaven result against York sort of went under the radar a little bit. I fancied York for that, but that's a great performance from Whitehaven. And of course, the big thing for the 5 championship clubs left is that they are 4 of those 5 are in the semi-finals of the 1895 Cup. Now there'll be a playoff to get down from 5 to 4, but there are some very famous clubs, like a Whitehaven, for example, that could be 80 minutes from playing at Wembley, which is sensational.
Do I subscribe to Premier to watch Warrington versus Wakefield? No, because I'll be down there at the ground to watch Wakefield versus Fev in the Women's Challenge Cup. But they've chosen two of the All Super League games, Wigan versus Salford as well, which you would as a commercial broadcaster wanted to get people to buy subscriptions from you, at least for a month. Leeds Cass on the telly, brilliant, on BBC.
BBC Two. Yeah. BBC Two, Saturday afternoon, 4:30.
And Barrow versus Huddersfield the day after. It's not an inspiring draw, but it's a draw. It is what it is. The people say it's a fix that Wakefield were drawn away. Well, you're either going to be at home or away. It's not.
In whose interest would it be to fix the draw?
Who did it? The Army fella, Navy fella, Yorkshire Pros.
Yorkshire Pros, Ben Taylor and Lee Crooks. So a Wakefield fan has drawn Wakefield away. Where's the conspiracy theory there?
It's always a conspiracy.
I do think that Barrow deserve to be on national terrestrial television for all the work they've done behind the scenes. They will make that an event, and whether they win or not against Huddersfield, that I think they do deserve exposure for the way they've carried themselves over the coronavirus period. They've done some fabulous stuff in the community and to keep the club going. And I have absolutely no doubt that if there was going to be a cup shot, which they're looking at the way Huddersfield are playing at the moment, the fact that Barrow are undefeated, that is exactly a game that should be on national terrestrial television.
Exciting transfer news today is Ryan Hampshire's back at Castleford. So there you go. There's something else Wakefield fans can moan about because he's not at Wakefield. He's at Castleford instead because they've got one half a half back. I don't know how many half backs.
Yeah, and Niall Evans as well out injured, which I think is a bit of a worry for them because a lot of their attacking focus does come through him and threat. So you would imagine that there could well be a spot for Hampshire at fullback and move O'Brien back into the halves.
Are there any other news bits we need to talk about before the fixtures coming up? The England squad, which was put together and then didn't bother meeting in Leeds because everyone's injured, apparently. I bet they're all fit for the weekend, he says, conspiracy theorist.
Strange one, that, because, again, you would even have hoped that you could turn it just solely into a media event, that even if Sean Wayne could only do a run-through with half of the players that he had available, you still get them together. You still, the whole idea in this World Cup year is that, once a month, he's going to have the guys in a classroom if necessary. They don't have to be out on a pitch. Plus, I know you were going to interview 3 or 4 of them. There is some space there that we haven't been able to fill with news about England, and I think that is a bit disappointing. There aren't too many sports in a World Cup year where you get the opportunity to have England together to do some interviews, and the whole thing gets called off at short notice because players have been injured. Well, I still think Sean Wayne would have preferred to have his guys, having afternoon tea together and bonding than not. But,
well, it's not as if we haven't been at Headingley or various grounds for launches of various Super League initiatives where players have been dragged here, there and everywhere. So I don't know why they're unwilling to do that for their country, but
seems a shame, an opportunity lost.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that we paid what I hope was a fitting tribute to Dave Hadfield yesterday at our event, and I think the panel there was very representative of people that knew Dave really well, and I think we all spoke with real genuine sorrow and passion about his contribution to the sport. Anybody that hasn't seen that yet, or perhaps isn't in a position to watch it, our thoughts are with Dave. I think rugby league very rarely has somebody who universally is deemed to be the influencer of a generation, and you speak to anybody who has tried to write about the sport around the time that Dave was in the press box. He was the guy that we all looked up to, we all aspired to be. Those of us that had the privilege of not only working alongside him but producing some of his work. There were a lot of people tweeting yesterday about the column he wrote in the early days of Forty20, extolling the virtues of pubs you could go to on the way to grounds. And the pubs that Dave always wants you to go to are the ones that are, got a bit of character, homely, and sell real ale, a bit like, Dave himself. Who, and there are still people that cut those out and kept them and refer to them whenever they're going somewhere. I think we said yesterday we were very fortunate to publish 6 of his books. That some were about the other loves in his life, folk music and eulogies to literature. And the thing about that was they were just as beautifully crafted, just as wonderfully written. And we'll miss him. And I remember when Sky, when they had magazine programs, had the idea of Up and Over, which became a wonderful book. And again, so everything he wrote, try and find it and read it. 13 Winters, 13 Worlds were beautiful evocations of where the game is played. But that Up and Under they did as a sort of a boots and all series that then became the book. And again, some of it is still on social media. Just the phraseology that Dave has when he goes to places like Hull, it's just beautiful. We did call him, and we're not the first to do it, the Bill Bryson of Rugby League. And when Thomas Keneally fates Dave Hadfield as the poet of Rugby League, that we've lost someone special. And the other thing I'd point to is Dave was the go-to man when Super League was ushered in 1995. His contacts were so good. He was so well respected as a journalist and the kind of guy that people would confide in. He had this persona called George Dunkley that he used to write under in Australia. But all of those people that were involved in the evolution of Super League and the meetings that were had and the offers that came in from Sky and the merger debate, you went to Dave. Dave was the most authoritative man that was writing about that over here, because he had the ear of everybody who really mattered. And with the greatest respect to anybody who's writing about Rugby League at the moment, whether it be in traditional newspaper format or on social media, they haven't got that. Dave had that because he was Dave. And we've lost the guy that could get Rugby League on the pages. We talk very much about column inches. One of the reasons Dave got column inches was because the guy who gave him the column inches, the sports editor, knew that every single word that they got would be worthy of publication. There will be some fabulous tributes to him. They deserve to be. I just think we're still all feeling that it's a massive loss that we can't replace.
I think when the dust settles later in the year, we'll have to have a proper respective with various people who knew Dave well. It
would be lovely because he deserves it as a man, and his writing deserves it, and his writing will go on forever. People will be pointing to the words of Dave Hadfield when in generations to come. But I think you're right. When the shock has subsided and the dust has settled, that we need to pay as fulsome a tribute to him as we can. And whilst he hasn't been a regular presence in the press box for a little while, the thought that he's not going to amble up with his tiny little sheepskin notebook and small pen and produce golden copy out of a few squiggles on a page it's a real sadness.
It is indeed. There's nothing else to say, is there, apart from what's coming up this week? I don't think. Can't really follow that. Thursday, Wigan and Castleford. 8 o'clock kickoff.
I mean, we've said all, well, ever we've been doing this, that we are not advocates of putting coaches under pressure. But
however,
depending on how Leeds and Castleford go this week, the two of them then meet the following week in the Challenge Cup. There's a possibility that for those clubs, half of their season could be over. It'd be very interesting to see how the clubs would react to that if that was the case. And I'm not saying that that Cass will lose at Wigan. I thought, Wigan have had the whole week in France and need to come back and reset themselves because it hasn't been that successful for them. They made so many mistakes against what we know is a really hard Dragons team to beat, particularly over there. But Wigan offered very little. Took a couple of steps back over that week away. It'll be interesting to see how they respond.
Thursday, of course, when that game is played, is the anniversary of our first ever programme on Radio Yorkshire. So
is it?
It is.
Wow.
17th of March 2014.
Wow.
I have the programme's up on our thing. Oh, damn, it's playing in my ears now. But it's 2 hours long. So if you want to listen to that, I'll put the link up.
Was it any
tomorrow.
good?
You're on it.
Was I?
So it must be good. It's a lot different to what things have become. But there you go.
There was no template for it, was there? So
no, there was. It's very strange listening back to it, but it is there, and I'll tweet the link out tomorrow because it's.
Who else was on?
I think it was just you. I could listen to it now and while we're talking and see if we can find it. Oh, there's all kinds of stuff on it. There's like, that's you. There's Mark Wilson. Never heard of him.
Clips from games, weren't there? So
yeah.
From commentaries from games and interviews after them.
Yeah, I think it's just us three on that one. Don't know. Scott Nelly didn't go on to the air, but that's another story for another. I think when eventually everything falls apart, we'll tell that story.
Can you smell sandwiches being cooked downstairs?
The bread, yes. Do miss the bread. On Friday, Salford Leeds, that's on telly. Catalans versus Hull KR. Why is that on a Friday night?
I think because is it one of them play
on Thursday the week after?
Thursday,
probably
something like that. I think because they knew that there could have been a Challenge Cup game on the Thursday.
Yes, yeah.
That they scheduled that on the Friday, but I think Catalan are playing on the Friday for the Challenge Cup. So yeah, I think it was just to give teams that breathing space.
Fair enough. Salford Leeds on the telly. That'll be a game. On Saturday, it's Toulouse versus St Helens at 5, which apparently is not on TV. So again, people asking, why is this not on TV? And they go, it's not on TV. But on Channel 4, what everyone's been waiting for, Warrington are going to do something ridiculous, aren't they? We know they are. As they take on the might of Wakefield Trinity, who have won the title twice since Warrington last won it in 1955. It's not going to be their year this year, but they must have something ridiculous planned for the pre-match. I mean, that the Dragon thing, that was a bit rubbish against the Catalans. Wizzy Rascal were probably all ball of now after 2 weeks. But
not going to knock them.
No?
I think they've got some really good ideas. Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Adam Hills fronting it and he won't be hiding the fact that he's a Warrington man. Good. I think be interesting to see what their lineup is this week. I think there'll be some changes. And the interesting thing about this game is not even the result, but the fact that there hasn't been any Rugby League on Channel 4 for a month. How will they reinvigorate the audience that they gained over those first 2 weeks?
Well, who can they get on from a Wakefield perspective? I don't know. Who's going to be. I'm looking forward to it. 12:30 kickoff on Channel 4. Probably will kick off on time. So that's good news. We go there with can just throw the dice. Willie Poaching at his fort. Was he at Warrington at some point with Tony Smith? Or is that my
absolutely? Yeah.
I say there's not. I can't remember half the things, so I didn't know if I made that up or not, but. That'll be good. The Ben Westwood derby. Ben
Westwood, yeah, he'll no doubt be part of the previewing, I would think.
What a signing that was. Gave Wakefield a load of cash, kept them in Super League as well that same year, Warrington. Everyone forgets Warrington were rubbish about 20 years ago. I mean, Wakefield, we've been rubbish for most of those 20 years, but Warrington were as well. Sunday, it is Hull FC versus Huddersfield Giants in a battle of two teams who are, well, one's inconsistent and the other's second in the table. What's going on with Huddersfield?
Yeah, Ian Watson's methods are starting to work. They've got, again, some players in key positions who are relatively settled and know and understand exactly what's being asked them. So, yeah, that'll be good. The battle of the two teams that begin with H.
In the Championship, all the games are on Sunday, apart from the TV game. It's Barrow, London, Batley, Fev, Dewsbury, Newcastle, Whitehaven, Sheffield, Workington, Bradford, and York versus Widnes, which is obviously a big game. York, that's on our league, but you have to pay to watch that, but you don't have to pay to watch the women. So I'll watch York versus Wigan. I'm working, so I can't watch it, but I could watch that for free and then not watch York and Widnes. And then on Monday, Halifax are having a party because they're welcoming Lee to the Shea, £10 for tickets. They're having all kinds of stuff and nonsense going on pitch side, which is exactly what you should be doing for these games where you're trying to get people in. I've seen lots of Super League clubs for the Challenge Cup giving away cheap tickets and stuff because we want to get crowds for the telly. So good to see clubs taking the initiative and hopefully Halifax rewarded with a big crowd down at the Shea on Monday against Lee, who of course have made their way into second in the table, just behind Featherstone Rovers. We get to go to Batley again for 2 times in 2 weeks. It's funny how
I enjoyed it that much. They're going back.
Yeah. Well, they scored 54 last week. How many will score this week? That's the big question for the mighty Adam Cuthbertson scored.
He did.
But so that's the Rugby League. I knew it wouldn't be a long one today because we spoke a lot yesterday, and there's not much to talk about, I don't think.
I would say that for anybody who's interested in how the media works, particularly at a local level, and let's face it, Rugby League is absolutely indebted to the coverage it gets at local level because it is geographically specific, then I think there's some interesting points made last night. And I'm not saying that go out and listen to our podcast. It was just a really interesting panel with a diverse set of views about how the media has changed. And I think if you were a student wanted to get into it, or maybe I think we had a couple of really good audience questions about why things happen in the way that they do, then hopefully it gave an insight. And the appeal, I think, that came out of it at the end was we need more women in the press boxes. And that starts with graduates who are now coming out of media courses that perhaps want to do sport. We need to find a way of getting them involved. So, if you're listening to the podcast and you want a career in writing about rugby league and covering it, and you are a young female graduate, I think now is a very good time to be looking for opportunities.
I was going to say, if you want any advice, come to us, but we're probably not the right people to ask advice from on anything because I've just got lucky my whole career, so I can't really advise on that, to be honest. But as I always say to people, if you want to come on the program and or want to see how, can't really come and see how we do it. Bloody hell, just stick a laptop on. There's no great backroom secrets to this, but I always say to any players who want to come on and get media experience, look at our track record. It's quite good, but I don't know.
I'm gonna make you a star. David Essex, probably too young for that.
We are David Essex.
We are the David Essex of rugby league.
Oh, what a circus! That's good. Exactly. Yeah. In answer to 2 questions from last night. Well, one answer, one question. Could you write 3,000 words on pre-1895 rugby? One match.
Yeah.
You could.
Well, you had no
and stuff, lineouts.
You had nobody to contradict you, did you?
Well, that's true. You could just make it up. Yeah.
So you could write whatever you wanted in whatever detail you wanted, because that was the report that people were hanging their hat on. Couldn't wait to read it because that was the only chance they got in an away game of knowing what had happened. So
I did because we're in an audience setting. I couldn't say typical Leeds blaming the referee in 1893 or whatever in Cardiff.
Before we'd even got to Northern Union, it was the referee's fault.
The referee changed into women's clothes and got a boat home. Have I mixed up 2 stories there?
No, that was when Leeds Parish Church were at home because they were known for abusing the referee, which is nonsense.
Parish
Church? They
Church?
represented a church, yeah. Well, that's what they got shut down for in the end.
Obviously, Wakefield Trinity, we would never have someone chase Carl Kirkpatrick off the pitch with an umbrella. And the other thing was, why don't people criticise players in match reports? Because when Scully had a go at Mark Sneed, everyone had a go at Scully. So what can you do? And he's the legend. He's in the Hall of Fame. So if he can't criticise players, what hope has anyone else got to do? We can still slag off refs, though. That's all right. You're allowed to do that. We know that. So. But I think that's it. But yeah, go back and listen to yesterday's program because it's interesting. And now we've done 2 programs in 2 days. We should be firing right up the iTunes charts, right above out of our league, if we're lucky. Because they're our new rivals, obviously. Phil, pleasure as always. We'll do something next week. I'm not sure exactly when. I keep meaning to ask people to come on next week, but I've so far asked no one. So that's good. Because I'm having a week off work, but I've not booked anyone in. So I might send some emails in the morning to ask people if they want to come on.
Well, and again, if anybody watching has suggestions as to who they'd like to hear from, we're more than happy to approach them.
Yeah. Why don't you tag them in tweets and shame them into coming on the programme? Unless they block us. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what we can do. I'm sure we'll find someone. And then hopefully the week after, or is that I don't know, is that a bank holiday? No, we're not in bank holidays yet.
We're approaching Easter, but that's I think the middle of April. So we'll have to work around those games. Well,
we'll see when Sky's available again, because obviously he wasn't available this week because he was at Johnny Whiteley's funeral, sadly. But we are having a bad period of time in terms of significant people in rugby league and their passing. So
David Stevenson, another who we should mention, 63, absolutely no age, and again one of the very few players who won every single medal that is available to a player, because the year he transferred to Leeds with Mr. Schofield, he won the Yorkshire Cup, so he became the Lancastrian that owned the Yorkshire. I think there's only 5 or 6 players in the history of the game that was won every single medal it's possible to win. And David Stevenson was one of them, and was a very, very talented and elegant centre. And again, another one that I think when Scully comes on, he'll be wanting to pay tribute to.
Kicked all the goals in the World Club Challenge against Manly.
He did. I was there. Fantastic night. 37,000 at the old Central Park. You could not move. Absolutely raucous atmosphere, and a real blood and thunder game that, just because there were only penalties, was one of the most exciting, intense matches you could ever want to witness. And yeah, it was Stevenson's 4 goals that won it for Wigan.
Did everyone bash each other in the head in those days? Because obviously that's what they did.
There was lots of head bashing. And as Sean Wayne will tell you, the only game he ever won the Man of the Match award for.
Well, we could have asked him about that, but well, in fact, he wasn't up for interview, so we couldn't have asked him that. Never mind. So we'll be back next week with some more stuff. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to yesterday's program. Thanks for all the comments about my hair, which looked terrible on the video. I'm going to stick with it. I can't be bothered. It's midlife crisis, and it's easier than buying a car because I can't drive, so there's no point buying a Ferrari. But there you go. We'll be back next week with more exciting, red-hot rugby league debate, just like David Melly used to have on 606 in the days when Chelsea weren't owned by an evil Russian, they were owned by an evil man called Ken Bates. It's funny how things turn around in it.